All right. My name is Elisa Gary, and again, I am the president of Inspired Conferences. I am so excited because I have an awesome guest that is going to be talking with me today. We are gearing up for our Escaping the Hurt Box conference that's coming up on this Saturday. You see how excited I am? I can't even talk. Our guest is Cheryl Lacey Donovan, and she is going to be actually our first runner-up speaker on this Saturday. She's going to be having a great talk. We'll get into that a little bit here in a moment, but I just want to give Cheryl an opportunity to introduce herself, tell us a little bit about who she is and what she does, and we're just going to have the next 30 minutes or so to have an awesome conversation. Welcome, Cheryl. How are you?
I am doing just great, Elisa. Once again, I just want to thank you so much for allowing me the opportunity to participate in the Escaping the Hurt Box discussion. I've had an opportunity to work with you before and was thrilled as could be to know that I will be working with you again, because these Inspired Conferences are awesome, and I think that they really are beneficial to the people that participate in them, so thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Yes, we did. We got to work together, I believe, on the Find the Fire retreat, correct? I think
that was it.
In the Women's Empowerment. And your husband joined us on that conference, and you guys were just jam-packed. He's kind of like the quiet storm of the group, but I really enjoyed that talk. I thought that it was needed, much as this one is. And while I was putting together this particular event, as you know, I have not done one in about a year, but as I was explaining to another one of our colleagues, I don't just do these conferences. They're like sermons, if you will. I have to be I have to be burdened with the topic. I can't just, much like when I'm writing, or, you hear songwriters say they don't make albums just to make albums. It's like pulling teeth when they do it that way. They have to have been given something that they needed to say, an answer to something that is in the atmosphere. And I just, even from just personal experiences, things from people around me that they were experiencing, it was needed. And I just kept having this idea, kept coming in my mind, escaping the hurt box. And I was like, what does that look like? So I was able to gather some dynamic speakers, 8 of you guys, and you came on with awesome topic, growing through difficulties, and that's important. That is so important, because as you know, when you're in the middle of something, it can become crushing. And a lot of times, even those of us that are dishing out the encouragement, it can become daunting trying to move forward with what God has positioned you to do, and you're hurting. And so I just wanted to get your take when you decided to do Growing Through Difficulties. What was it that you were really wanting people to hear or to gather from your talk?
Well, first of all, I want to speak to something that you said a few minutes ago. I believe that that's why these conferences are as good as they are. I think that this is why they're so helpful and why they go over so well, because it is something that you have been burdened with. It is something that, I believe that God has just deposited into your DNA, and I think that that's why they go over so well. And he seems to put the right people in your path for each one of them that you've done. And I believe that that's why they come out so wonderful. But we were talking about going through difficulties. What I really want people to understand is that none of the things that we go through are meant for our demise. They are a way for us to, I like to call it, build our faith muscle. Because, we can say we have faith all day long, but until that faith is tested, And I believe that there's a scripture in the Bible that talks about it brings about perseverance, and it brings about, building your character and things like that. So it's not until you face those difficult trials and situations in your life that you really have to work out that faith, that you really have to put it forward and before you every day and say, you know what? I don't really see the light at the end of the tunnel, but I know that there will be a light at the end of the tunnel because I know who it is I believe in and who I trust in. And it's those kinds of issues that really make us put the rubber to the road, so to speak. Because we talk about it all the time. I have faith, I believe. But do you really? Do you really believe? Because, it's in those moments when you're like, okay, I know I've been saying this all this time, but, I don't know, God, are you really going to show up for me? Are you really going to help me get out of this situation? And that's really what I believe they are for. We're supposed to go through them. Now, when that does not happen, is when I believe we see people repeating the cycle over and over and over again. It's just like when we talk about a test becoming a testimony and those kinds of things. We have to repeat the test when we don't pass it. So that's why it's so important for us to grow, to identify what the actual lesson is in the situation that we're dealing with so that we can grow from it, move forward, and continue pressing forth towards the high calling.
Oh, wow. I've heard this before, but every time I've heard it, a lot of times people don't explain. It's really important that you share that when you do not pass a test, you have to do it again. Mm-hmm. It may not be the exact same thing, but the root of the test is the same. It's just like a version A and a version B.
There you go.
Of a quiz, of a pop quiz.
Yeah.
So can you explain a little bit, like maybe you can use your own personal example where you didn't pass it the first time and you recognized it, maybe not immediately, but shortly thereafter that you didn't do well the first time and you were having to tackle that test again.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I can think about years ago when I first received what I believe to be my calling into ministry. And I remember at one point standing flat-footed and telling my dad, I'm not going to deal with church people. I don't like church people. They're hypocrites. They don't know what they're talking about. I don't like them. I can't stand them. And, and I told him, I don't know how you do it. I don't get it, and I'm not even thinking about that. Well, and it's so crazy because when I say this, sometimes people don't, people may think that I'm being facetious or whatever, but I'm telling you that I know that these things occurred because I was not walking in my calling. The first time that I ignored it, I got fired from a job that I had been working at for 5 years, first time and last time actually that I've ever been fired. I got fired from that job, and the reason for that was because my youngest son had the chicken pox. I had just come off of Christmas break, a 2-week Christmas break, and it was a brand new year, January. Took him to the clinic that I worked for, to a doctor that was there. The doctor wrote out the notice saying, he can't go back to school, so I need to be off work. Took it to my manager. She saw him, and everything was fine. Okay, go ahead and take off this other week. And I had days, I had time. Came back to work for an entire week, and then Friday got laid off. And they said, got fired. Yeah, they said because I had abandoned my position when my son was sick. So I'm thinking, okay, Lord, that doesn't make any sense. But, immediately after that, I started teaching. Now, mind you, I'm telling you, I already know that he's called me to do something else, but I'm still being stubborn. And I said, okay, well, God, I can teach. I know you want me to speak and to talk to people and things like advise people. So I can do it in this small arena because I'm not trying to speak to a whole lot of people. I don't want to do that. I don't like them like that. So that was the first time. Second time, I was at a job. This was probably about 7 years ago, and was working there. And this place had been in existence for over 20 years. I worked there for 4 of those years, and once again had that pressing, that unction in my spirit. You're going to do what I told you to do, or else, right? So I wrote the book, Women, What the Hell Are You Thinking? And we're still working there. And sure enough, out of nowhere, the company closed down.
Wow.
company closed, I said, okay, God, I hear you. Okay, I hear you, and I'm going to stop running, and I'm going to start doing exactly. And that's kind of when the speaking kind of took off, and I accepted the fact that I had been called into the ministry and started moving forward with it from there, and have not had any difficulties. Everything that he's shown me, every vision he's given me, he's made sure that there was a provision for it. But I recognize very much so that my disobedience in those two areas is why those things occurred, because I was ignoring what he was telling me to do. So I had to keep learning that test until I finally said, okay, God, yeah, you got me. I'm here.
All right. I completely understand. I had something similar when I was working. At that time, I believe I was working for Verizon Wireless, their business department, and I didn't even realize that I was being trained to do what I'm doing now. Everything was virtual, and people didn't believe that I had a real job because I was at home. And I went to work lovingly with my close friends. We would be out if I was at Walmart or Wally World, as we call it affectionately. I'd go over to the intimate section and get a cute little nightgown. I'd say, okay, I've got my work clothes. I got this week. And that's how I worked, because everything was virtually. And I was working, and I got to move to Arizona because I had that job. I just had to, when we moved, bring my computer, hook up internet, and I was back to work seamlessly. And I was really grateful for that. I was, had small children, so I was able to work within that schedule, and my husband, my duties at home. And I was just really comfortable. Comfortable. And I started getting this pulling, like, you're not supposed to be here this long. I was actually doing really well. I was initially brought on under Eddie Bauer, a seasonal worker. I was supposed to just be an order taker, and I was glad for that, because I was, we had small kids. We needed the extra income, and I didn't have to run around in the car and get daycare at that point. And so I did really well. I was a fast learner. I could communicate well over the type of media that they had, and I gradually just kept adding skills. And I was like, oh, this is going great. And I got added on longer. And then when they ended, I got actually extended another opportunity. They actually put me out there to their other clients, and I got picked up with Verizon. So I was really comfortable where I was. And eventually, God started telling me it was time to go. And I was like, I don't know about this. Like, what do you mean? I can still do the other things that I was doing. I was doing the Complete Woman Fellowship call, and I was doing that weekly. I was doing the recordings, which was the precursor to Inspire conferences. And I just was like, I don't know what you mean. So I had to go to a conference in New Orleans for a week. And God spoke with me and said, I need to talk with you. And I know to some people that may seem so over the top, but I know.
Right, but it's true.
And I literally had oh God, Daddy wants to talk to me. I'm in trouble.
Right.
And so, and lovingly, my husband knows how God deals with me, and I've had very key points in my life where this has happened to me, and I know it means change. And he's so loving that even if he didn't completely understand at the time, he allowed me. So I was only supposed to be gone a week for this conference, and I went a whole week early because the way that I was able to go was through some timeshare or something, and I couldn't take less than a week. It would have cost us more money. So if you imagine, it all just was lined up so divinely. We had small children. They were in school. My husband we were the only ones that lived in Arizona at the time, so we didn't have support. So here I am, married, mother of 3 small children, and I'm off on the other side of the United States in a timeshare in New Orleans. And I've already got to be there a week. And I'm there that week, and God just was dealing with me. He was dealing with me about hurting people, and he was dealing with me about my speaking, and I was just so doubtful. I was so doubtful. So how am I supposed to do this? I just moved. The reason I'm even in Arizona is because you told me to move and pack audibly, and I'm here, and I don't feel like I'm doing anything. I'm disconnected. I'm doing this call every week that you positioned me to do, and I don't feel like it's going anywhere. What is the point? And he said, quit your job. And I said, my job? And so, to make a long story short, I did not obey. I was there for 2 weeks. He dealt with me with it for 2 weeks. I came home. I did not quit my job. And what wound up happening, I actually didn't get fired. God was so gracious with me. I think it was more because of the children than because of me. But so I had never had any sort of issues tech-wise with my job. I was always in on time. I never had my systems breaking down. I was very diligent about what happened on that computer and what didn't. My phone line, everything was set up. And then all of a sudden, I would log in, and I would just drop off the calls in the middle of a call with a client. It was just like heaven just disconnected the line. And there was nothing wrong. On my end, we could find. I had the cable and the phone company come out, the level 3 tech people on up to the supervisors at the job was looking into it to make sure, of course, I wasn't just being a bad employee and hanging up on people and disconnecting to say I was working and getting paid and not. And this went on for a month. This went on for a month, 4 weeks straight. And so finally it got to the point where I would log in, I would tell them I was there, I would have somebody mirror into my computer to see that I was there and take calls and watch what was happening. So it baffled them. So they had to pay me for 4 weeks, and I barely worked any time. And what I noticed over that time started happening, I was doing ministry stuff. I had time to sit, and I was working on extra time for the calls. I had ideas that came to me, whereas before I didn't have the time. I was working on because I wasn't working. And so finally, after week 4, I was like, okay, you know what? It should have taken me this long. Enough is enough. And after being, and now I felt like I was stealing because these people were paying me, and even though they couldn't figure out what it was, I knew what it was. And I just quit. And I just quit. And I started doing Inspired conferences, and even though I was like, even in that, who knows me? Who's going to, I don't have any money.
Exactly. I know exactly what you're saying.
I don't know what is going on with this, but to my surprise, God just opened the doors, and it's been difficult at times, but I have learned so much, and I've been so encouraged by the people that are supposed to be doing these talks, just like you, to encourage our listeners, and it's amazing. It's amazing how God does things.
It is. It really is how he puts things together, and when you sit back and really think about it, and know how effortless. Like you said, it's not that it's just always easy and everything just kind of happens, but you know that it's his divine hand that is orchestrating and guiding everything because it just falls into place. Even with what we're doing now with our media company, Real Life, Real Faith Media, you know, we're doing radio, and right now we're on local access TV, and we're going to expand that, and we're expanding our magazines to include Women Walking by Faith and Men of Faith, and our whole thing is about changing the narrative and getting the word out about who God is, not just, you know, the supernatural being that nobody can access, but how he is in our own lives, our daily lives, how to apply. You know, sometimes, you know, we may go to church every Sunday and maybe even go to Bible study and still not really understand who God is or have a relationship with him or how he interacts with us on a daily basis in our lives. And that's really what we've been trying to do with the Real Life, Real Faith Media platform, is to bring that, make it relevant to people. And, you know, these people, I went from maybe 10 people with one magazine that we started in February to 53 people when we launch in January with one main magazine and 5 different expansion magazines that speak to individual people, women, men, moms, single moms. You know, and I just look at it and sit in awe because it just fell into place. And I'm like, God, you know, if I had known that it would be this easy all the time, just listen to you.
Well, it is easy when you do it His way. And I guess that leads me into my next question. I'm sure many of our listeners have experiences, things where it's just like you talk about faith. And in your talk, you discuss trusting God as you're going through your trial. And sometimes we think of trial as such a horrible thing that happened, and that is a trial. But we also have these times, just as both of us, where we are battling with making a decision, moving forward in a situation, and you don't know the outcome. And that is the epitome, the very definition of faith. So can you share briefly, in your opinion, what is the difference between trusting God and having faith? Because they're not the same thing.
No, they're not the same thing. They're not the same thing. You know, when you trust God, it is, I'm trying to make it where it can be plain. When you trust God, it's just a knowing in your spirit that you are never alone, that He sees everything that's going on, but He's trying to allow you, because I firmly believe, the Bible even tells us that we've already been given the power over the enemy. We have that power. We have a power to take authority over the enemy. And we have to trust God that power is real. But having faith says that even though I don't see it, even though it's not something that is tangible right now, I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that if what I am doing is in alignment with the will of God, that everything is going to work out for my good, because that's the promise. That's what He says. All things, even the bad stuff that I'm going through, I have faith that it's going to work out for my good in the end, whatever that is, because it's all a part of God's perfect plan. That's when I'm walking in obedience to Him. But trusting Him means that all of those promises that are in the Bible, I trust His word. I trust His character. But you can't do that if you don't know what the word says. You can't trust his character and His word if you never spend time in meditation with Him and in reading and in the worship and in His presence. You can't trust somebody that you don't know. And because He is not a natural being, the only way for us to get to know who He is for us to read His word and to identify what His word says about us. That's how you develop the trust in God. And then once you've developed the trust in God, it gives you the faith and the hope to know that whatever you deal with in your life, that all of those promises that He's given to you are going to impact whatever your situation is. If it says that He can do exceedingly and abundantly more than you could ask or think according to what worketh in you, then you can trust. That's His word. That's what it says. But you have to have faith enough to know that if He's already planted it inside you and you've been given the authority and the power, you need to tap into that thing that He's placed inside of you in order to change your situation.
Right. One of the things that really stuck out to me is that you have a lot of people, they're in hurt boxes, but a very common hurt box is a hurt box of past hurts, and more importantly, the box of unforgiveness. And I'd like to know what you would share with someone who is or maybe dealing with family members, many of times are Christians themselves, that have hurt them. And they feel that they have forgave them, but still a resistance to interacting with them. And we see this a lot of times where maybe to them you didn't add up to what they thought, or there was some rift in the family and someone got made to feel that they were on the outskirts, or they weren't the go-to one, or whatever the case. We see this in all facets of life, and this spans across ethnicity and gender. It does not have to do more with one than another. I'd like to know I want to word this. If they're trying to figure out if they forgave, but if they're still resistant, is this true forgiveness? Or would you suggest that they identify if they're just being wise in their interaction with them and not maybe necessarily reconciling? Because we know the Bible, especially even with dealing with Joseph, where he not only forgave his brothers, but he reconciled with them. They're not the same thing. Or if they are simply still being unforgiven, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. The first thing that we have to recognize about forgiveness is that you can't do it by yourself. You're not, especially the more horrendous the offense, the more difficult it's going to be for you to forgive, and you definitely cannot do it on your own because it is a heart thing. The other thing you have to understand is that it is a choice. You have to choose to forgive, and it is not about denying the fact that this person has hurt you or excusing the fact that the person has hurt you. And you also, don't want to, especially if it's somebody that's not saved or somebody that really does not know the Lord or whatever the case may be, you don't necessarily want to put yourself back in harm's way for them to continue to hurt you. But at the end of the day, forgiveness is not really about the other person. It's about you, because we go back to the whole trust in God issue and the faith issue. And the word says that if you cannot forgive somebody else, then you cannot be forgiven. So you have to find a way. You have to ask God and trust Him that He is going to do exactly what the word says, that if I forgive, then He's going to forgive me, and have faith that at some point He's going to be able to change whatever that is that you're harboring and holding in your heart. Now, it's a process. It's not something that's going to happen overnight for us. But I think that the more spiritually mature that you are, the easier it may be for you to get to the point where you forgive. Because I hear people all the time say, oh, well, I forgive, but I don't forget. Well, then in my mind, you haven't really forgiven. Because the word says that when God forgives, He casts it into the sea of forgetfulness. In other words, He doesn't remember the offenses. He doesn't remember the sins that I committed.
Right.
So that if we want to truly be like Christ, which is supposed to be ultimately our goal, to be like Him, then we have to get to a place where we can do that. But it still goes back to, are you in the Word? Are you in God's presence? Are you not only, because sometimes when we talk about that, it's a monologue kind of thing where we're talking to Him, but we don't really allow Him to speak back to us. It's not a dialogue. So are you allowing Him to speak back to you? And then when He speaks to you, are you really listening? Because if you're listening, He's not going to tell you to just totally forsake your brother. You need to go and try to correct them in love and to let them know that you forgave them. And again, it doesn't mean going back and putting yourself in harm's way with someone that you know have not been saved. But what you can do in the interim is to continue to pray for their salvation and to continue to let God know, God, I don't want you to seek vengeance on my behalf for what the offenses this person has committed against me. I forgive them, and I pray that you too will forgive them and that you will save them and show them the error of their ways, show them how what they did was wrong. But it's a process, and it takes some spiritual maturity, and it takes some really getting into the Word of God and getting into God's presence, and again, not only just speaking to Him, but allowing him to speak to you and acting on that which you hear. Because he's not gonna tell you to just forgive and forget. He's just not going to do that because that's not the kind of God he is. It's not how he does us.
Right, exactly. This is such an amazing conversation. I know we're coming to the end of our time. I guess, one of the biggest categories we have is, aside from children, mothers, fathers, if you will, our marriages. And I was listening to something yesterday. I think it was actually Bodie Buckham, and he was talking about, even in his own family, that he saw 25 marriages and 23 divorces in the midst of his family. My God, over 90%.
Yeah.
And he shared that a lot of them were infidelity related, either on one part or in a lot of cases both parts, which was horrendous to think about, because we say the word infidelity and it's like these day and age is almost like saying candy. It's so common, and it shouldn't be. So I guess my last question would be, what would you share for couples that have experienced this hurt, and how would you suggest they escape their hurt boxes together to rescue?
Well, I can say this. My husband and I have been together 28 years, and we've been married 22 of those years. And I do not ever put out there, neither one of us does, that it's an easy thing. But you have to be committed to the relationship. You have to recognize that you have made a covenant, not just between one another, but between one another and God. And I think that the reason that we see so much of this now is because people, those two things, they never think about those before they get married. They don't think about the commitment that's involved, and they don't think about the covenant that's involved. Because at the back of their mind, I believe they know that if it doesn't work out, we can just go get a divorce. No big deal. Nobody really explains to them the importance of that covenant. Back in the day when they made a covenant, they would split, I think it was like a lamb or a calf or something, in half and walk through it after they made the covenant, because they were saying, let this be done to us if we break this covenant. And that was, not even talking about marriage, just any covenant, period. So, when you look at it that way, to the point where, let me be slaughtered, let me be cut in half, if I ever break the covenant that I have made between myself and you and us and God. That's one thing. Second thing is, I think that we go into marriage these days, society makes us believe, especially as women, that we need to, rush into it. Our time is clicking, our time clocks are ticking, and, we need to hurry up and get married so we can have some babies and all this kind of stuff. And we need to get away from that, because, first of all, as women, we shouldn't be looking for our mate anyway. The Bible says that he that findeth a wife findeth a good thing. And when Boaz found Ruth, Ruth was gleaning in the field. She was working for herself and working on herself. And as women and men, that's really what we should be doing prior to even trying to get into a relationship, and going into that relationship not with a 50-50 mentality, but with a mentality where each of us is 100% whole. Because if one of us is 50 and the other one is 50, or one is 75, the other is 25, we're going to be looking to that other person. We're going to be looking to our spouse to complete us as opposed to complement us. And because we have those mindsets going in, it creates some of those other issues that we deal with through our marriages, particularly with infidelity. Because if you didn't meet that 25% of the need, I came into the marriage 75%. If you didn't meet that 25%, then now I'm going to look for that 25% somewhere else. Or if we went in 50-50, if you didn't meet that 50%, then now I'm going to go try to find that other 50% somewhere else, because that was my mentality going in, that you were going to somehow a complete me. And nobody can complete you but you and God. So we have to step back for a moment and even look at what the institution of marriage is even about and stop taking it so lightly and believing that we even need to get into marriage because maybe it wasn't meant for everybody to be married. Paul said, I'm not meant to be married. I'm going to go out here and do what God wants me to do. So maybe that is your lot in life. But you really need, again, to get into God's presence, read his word, and ask him. That's where we mess up a lot of times in all of the things that we do. He says he knows the plans that he has for us, but we never ask him what those plans are. We go out there and we create our own plans, our own agendas, find our own mates, our own jobs, all of those things, and then want to go to God and ask him to bless it, as opposed to asking him first and then moving according to what he told us. Because remember, that spirit is already on the inside of us. Those things are already planted on the inside of us, and we need to reference them and speak with the Spirit and speak with God to find out what it is we need to be doing with a mate, with a job, with anything else, careers, businesses, ministries, whatever it is that we're doing. It still goes back to getting in the Word, communing with God, getting his presence, and taking out the time to spend time with him, to get to know him and build a relationship with him, because then he can help us grow through the difficulties that we face.
Absolutely. Listen, Cheryl, it was so great to sit and have this time, this opportunity to talk on such an important topic. And I think that everything that you have shared with us today is powerful and impactful, and I'm looking forward to us connecting again in the future. Eventually, you'll be calling out for me to help you.
I've been thinking about it. I'm telling you. I'm trying to give you time to get through this one, but then I got something for you. I sure do.
I'm always calling on you for your help, and you answer without avail despite how busy you are in your schedule, and I am so appreciative and grateful for you for that. Listen, just take the last couple of minutes to let our listeners know how they can connect with you, what projects you have coming up that they'll be able to connect with you on, and when they'll be able to hear your awesome talk coming this Saturday, October the 24th, during the Escaping the Hurt Box event.
Well, I like to tell people that I'm Googleicious. They can Google me and find me anywhere, but specifically they can go to CherylLaceyDonovan.org, and Cheryl is spelled with a C, CherylLaceyDonovan.org. I am on Facebook. They can go to Real Life, Real Faith with Cheryl Lacey Donovan, because my private page is full, but Real Life, Real Faith with Cheryl Lacey Donovan. I'm on Twitter at @CLaceyDonovan, and really on pretty much all the social media that is available. If they want to book me to speak anywhere, they can go to booking at CherylLaceyDonovanSpeaks.com. So, and I look forward to it, and yes, ma'am, I know that we will continue to connect in the future, and I do have something that I think that you would be perfect for, so just look out for the call after everything gets done Saturday.
All right. All right. Well, that is our time with Ms. Cheryl Lacey Donovan today. We want to thank all of you for listening in, whether you're joining us from our digital workbook on inspiredconferences.org, or if you found us over the social media verse through Facebook or on Twitter, even Pinterest. We so thank you, and we hope that you continue to share with us your work, how you've learned to better yourself and escape your hurt box on our Facebook page, Inspired Conferences, or using the hashtag Escaping the Hurt Box. This is Elisa Gary with Inspired Conferences, and we thank you.